Hello, everyone. In today's episode, I'm back with Kyle Gookins. You may remember him from episodes 1 and 9. Kyle and I recorded this one a while back when fall sports were in their preseasons. But even now, as winter sports are ramping up, I think the conversations are relevant and interesting to hear. For those of you who don't remember, Kyle is a former Division I head men's soccer coach and USSF Youth National Team scout who currently scouts for an MLS team. Welcome back, Kyle. So what are you seeing out there in the big world of soccer right now?
It's fall sports. They're in preseason. So my phone is blowing up right now because I'm on a few text chains of, head coaches that are in preseason, and they just keep texting each other various funny memes and different things because they're all in double days and doing things. So I think they're just bored and trying to chat to people. But we would always have all right, who's going to be you're always in for a surprise,
right?
In preseason. You're always going to have a surprise. It could be a good surprise or it could be a bad surprise, but there's something's going to surprise you. And we would always try to guess it. All right, who's going to be the surprise this year? We would just try to have a little bit of fun with it and go all right, who's you try to guess who's going to surprise you. I never got it right. I never got it right. That's why it's a surprise, I guess.
So for me in the preseason and in Division III, you don't actually have preseasons. You just have a starting date and that's it. You go.
Really?
Well, for most sports, I think actually the fall sports get to come to school a little earlier. The start date's determined by the first day of school, and there's some allowances there with the NCAA.
Is that just D3? Because D1 it has to do with your first competition date.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. I'd have to double check that. Yeah. But I would always sit there during the first, couple days of practice and wanting one of my players that I kind of took a chance on in recruiting and thought that, we needed to fill the roster. I didn't get the recruits that I really wanted. So I had that extra spot and I gave it to this kid that was showing potential, the one out of all of them that I had talked to that was showing the most potential. And there she is on the first day. And in my heart of hearts, I'm like, she's just gonna surprise me and blow me out of the water. And then you watch her hit the first ball and you're like, oh, poop. Now yep. So those text chains included a lot of poop emojis from me and and then, of course you get the surprise. One of my favorite stories, and this is actually a success story too, but one of my all-time, my highest recruit that I've ever gotten in, and we got so much, PR we use the site Tennis Recruiting for recruiting at that time. And we had so much attention for pulling in the first 5-star in Division III women's tennis, right? She didn't show up for the first day of practice. Didn't show up. So, I mean, she and I, look, she made it. She was a success story.
Yeah.
We're good friends now. And at my retirement party, she roasted me. I roasted her. And that was the first thing I said. I'm like, she got lost on campus coming to the tennis courts, which are in the center of campus.
She got lost.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we have good laughs about that. But I totally get it. That first week, I mean, the point is, we as coaches, we can recruit, we can watch and scout and talk to coaches and follow the progression of success of players. Doesn't matter what the sport is, but we are never 100% right or 100% sure. And we never get exactly who we want. This is what I say to my student athletes now that I work with from all sports all the time. There's a trickle down effect. Coach has their top list, then they have their tier 2, they have their tier 3. They know exactly where they're going. What are the chances of them getting to the tier 2? It depends, but every year is different. But we never get everyone we want. So there's a little bit of hope that goes into that first week of practice.
It's so true. I mean, that's a lot of I keep texting, I'm on these chains. I'm like, oh, how's it going? And they're just like, we still don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, we're still figuring guys out, they're figuring us out. And it's funny. You just mentioned, we coaches go out there and recruit. And I don't think this came up yesterday when I was at this MLS Academy and I was chatting to one of the 17s head coach there. And we were talking about, college coaching and the transfer. We don't have to talk about the transfer portal today, but we so we can say that for another day. But we were just chatting about that, like guys moving clubs and different things like that. And he's like, I try to tell guys that there is a difference between recruiting and coaching.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
when coaches are recruiting, of course they're selling. Like, of course they are. They're like rolling out the red carpet. They're telling you like, here's where you can get to. Here's where we see the projection. We're hoping you can get there. But then when you're there, the job of a coach changes. They're not they've got to push you out of your comfort zone. They got to push your buttons a little bit to get you to like perform at higher levels. So I think sometimes I remember going through it as a player. I definitely remember it as a coach. Like, oh man, there's a dip at that. We're talking about preseason. There's a huge dip in these guys. Like they come in all excited, especially newer players. And then that first week, it's like almost like they're drinking from a fire hose. And they're like, oh my gosh, like where's the player we recruited? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, no, it doesn't mean they don't like you. It's like, you just have to push on through that. Like you have to persevere a little bit. And they're not a different person. They're coaching you now. Like their job as a recruiter is to like sell you on the project and the vision of the program. But like once you're there, now you're part of the vision. Like you got to help drive that vision and push it. And so I think sometimes people forget it. Like they just want to be told everything's great and you're doing awesome. And it's like not always the case. Sometimes you're told a hard truth. And I think sometimes they get jaded and that, especially in preseason. It's like, it can be a lot for new players. It was for me. I remember I called my dad. I was very fortunate. My dad played college football.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of like background of that. And I didn't know he did this. I found out later when where I played college soccer, I then coached afterwards. I was a grad assistant after it. So like I got a different perspective being a player and a coach there. And I have a really good relationship with my coach because he coached me and then I worked for him. So it was like, and I didn't know that before the first day of practice, my dad called, or like after I committed, he called him and he said, this is the only time you're going to hear from me. And I just want you to know that like, if you need anything from me, you can call me, but I'm not going to call and pester you. But this is the only time I hope you hear from me, is what he basically told him. Like this, I just, wish you luck. And if you need my support with anything to help him, let me know. I didn't know this. Like Simon told me later, he's like, oh yeah, your dad called me and just told me like, this is the only time you're going to hear from me. Yeah. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't even know that.
Right.
Because I remember calling my dad after like 4 days of preseason.
Right.
And I was like, I got brought in, like same thing. I was a high profile player they brought in, like a guy that was going to go Division I, then Division II. I barely played the first preseason game. I was like, I was like, why would you bring me and give me this scholarship money to then not play me?
Right.
My dad was like, whoa. Like, you need first, like, calm down. Like,
let's adjust that attitude.
Yeah. No, he was like, look, you have two options. Like, you can be an asset or you can be a liability. Like that, you have two options out there. So like, and it completely changed my mindset, because I think like now, if I didn't have that advice, I would have transferred.
Yeah.
I would have immediately just gone, this isn't for me. It's too hard. They don't really want me here. They're not feeding my ego. Yeah. And he was like, no. You have to make them play you. Like they want to win the game. They just don't think you can help them win. That's it. Like it's when they broke it down like that, I was like, oh, okay, you got to be the hardest working player out there. They will play you. And I was like, all right, done. And it like just changed. He was like, you don't get to complain to me. And which is great advice for me as a parent. I was like, I have a son. Luckily he doesn't, he's not in sports, but I would give him the same advice. It's like, you have to make them want to play you. And I don't, I think sometimes the transfer portal is an easy way out of uncomfortable situations where it's like, I think when you break it down, like most coaches, they want to develop people, but like they want to try to win the game. Essentially, we're all competitive. We want to try to win. It's like, all right, we want to help the athletes, help us, help the team win. So we're going to put the people who we think are going to do well.
Well, and there's just so many things that I want to explore there. And I think this is the purpose of this podcast, really, is for us as coaches or ex-coaches to be able to help parents to help their kids. Because if you hadn't had a dad that had played a college sport, was familiar with dynamics and coaching things, you wouldn't have gotten that kind of advice. And without that advice, who knows where you would have gone? Like your attitude could have been sour in that first game, which could have cost you the next game and the next game and the next, and like that kind of steady decline, your attitude, your energy follows your thoughts, right? And so if your attitude is down, that's going to impact your playing and your performance. And suddenly you're not the top dog anymore. Like the coach in that moment, when he wasn't playing in that first game, he's thinking, I'm going to develop him. He's got a lot to learn, this, that, and the other. That's all he's thinking. He's not saying, let's sit Kyle down so he learns a lesson. That's not what a coach is saying. He's not like, let's teach this number one recruit, what it's all about to be here. Like, that's not what a coach is doing. Like you said, a coach wants to win. He's thinking big picture. He's thinking this kid needs, some growth, some development. He's there for, and if you hadn't had that kind of experience with your father and that kind of guidance, that could have gone sour in so many different ways. And look at you stayed at the same school, you played for 4 years, you were a success story, you then worked for, became a coach, et cetera, et cetera. And the number one thing, just to make this a little personal with my kids, number one thing that I said to my husband as we went into soccer, they're both soccer players, I will never call the coach.
Yeah.
If there's an issue, I will never call a coach. Now I had to back down a little bit off of that when they were, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And, there's some other situations at play, certainly, but it was always with an understanding that the coach has this bigger picture idea of how to get my son and his team to where it needs to go. And so I'm there to support that vision, and that's it. And if a coach needs me, then great. They know I'm there. I love that. When my kids are in college, I will never call the coach unless it has to do with mental health.
Yep.
That would be the only time, and that's what we recommend for families as well that we work with. But just sit back. I have so many funny stories of parents reaching out to me as a coach. What I should have done now in retrospect is had a parent expectation meeting at the beginning of the year over Zoom. We didn't use Zoom. But
it wasn't a thing, right? Yeah.
It wasn't a thing, but now we could. So a nice Zoom parent expectation meeting would be great. Let's set it up. But there are so many parents, it doesn't matter how many expectations you lay on them, how clear you are with the boundaries you're trying to set as a coach. They just believe that there are things they need to say to you at certain times and you need to hear them. Like one of the ones that comes to mind now, and I'm sure I have loads that will come to mind later. I had a parent, and I love her, but every time her daughter had a birthday, her mom would text me to let me know, I just want you to know, she's a little homesick and her birthday's coming up. So could you just make sure that you let everyone know and do something special for the birthday? And my gut reaction to that is, okay, this is a 20-year-old girl is messaging me to tell me that it's your birthday. But, when I get a little bit more professional, I start to think about the separation of duties on a team and what a role of a captain is versus what is a role of a coach. And so to say to any parents that might be listening, if you really feel like your daughter is homesick or needs a little boost on their birthday, the better person to reach out to would be the captain of the team, or perhaps a teammate or a friend, not necessarily a coach.
That's such good advice. Like that is really, really good advice. See, I also forget that, it was different as a player versus a coach because I didn't have as easy access to my parents. I made the joke to my wife, like when I went to college, I changed the permanent address at my school. So like my parents didn't even know what grades I got. Like it wasn't like there was an online, you couldn't check it. Like it got sent to where my on-campus housing. Like it was all there. Amazing. Like they didn't see anything. Like I was like, I'm 18, I'm an adult, I'm going to handle it. Like they had no idea. Like, so it's like, it's now, but I take for granted. Like I'm sure when my son's in college, I'll text him, hey, how's it going? Like, how you feeling? Like, checking in. So it's like, it's the access to your son or daughter is at your fingertips, but lean into the other people and the supporting cast in the group, right? The roommates, the other people on the team. And that's so important. I would say that as guys go on visits, or, guys or girls go on visits, I'm like, it's just as important to get the vibes of the coaches as it is to get the vibes of the players.
Yes.
Those are the people you are going to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, location's awesome. Like, oh, it's by the beach. Great. But are the players nice? Like, what's the culture of the team? Like,
right.
Because that can get you out of that homesickness, or that can,
100%. Yeah.
It's funny you talked about parents, and I think we used to, as coaches, we would go into preseason and we would purposely set up people by roommates. If we were like, all right, this person needs to get away from their parents, they're a little bit too overbearing. So we would put them with, especially like in men's soccer, we'd put them with like a foreign player.
Yeah.
Because foreigners are like, they're a little bit older, you know what I mean? They're a little bit, they usually came in a little bit more mature, like, you have an 18-year-old freshman American, you have like a 20-year-old, German player who's been out of the house a little bit. So he's just like, come on, don't worry about you. So it was like kind of giving him a little bit different perspective on things.
Right.
We would like try to set those things up to help balance that.
Absolutely.
Because you're so right. Like there were parents that you'd hear from a lot. My favorite ones were the ones that would tell me how prepared they were going into the season.
Right.
Like that was something to be celebrated. And I was like, shouldn't that just be the standard? So luckily I know that's me and you are very similar with that. Yeah. I was like, I would always have a gut reaction, like, what? And then I would write it down. Luckily, when I was a head coach, I had an incredible administrative assistant, and I would go out to her, and her son happened to be in college at a different school. So I'd always go, is this appropriate to send back to this email? And she'd go, it's a little harsh. And I was like, okay, like it would balance me out. I think that is so important, because if I would have just sent my gut reaction, it would have been just another bad, follow-up email. But I think those to me were like, I know that she had good intentions. The mom did it. Like, hey, he's excited to be back. And I had to, I needed to take a step back. I'm like, okay, I just need to send like, thanks. We are excited too. Like that's, whereas my gut reaction would have been
I'm glad your child is fit. Thank you.
I wanted to respond. I wanted to pick up the phone and go like, isn't that what he's supposed to do? Like, I don't, so that to me was more of the, like, like almost no matter how, I think the parents I didn't mind parents that were upset, because that to me showed that they cared about their child. Yeah. And they really wanted to question what I was. That didn't bother me as much. I'm like, all right, you care about them, and there's a reason maybe that your son's not performing, whether it's academically or athletically or something. But that's an easier conversation. To me, it was like the parents that were lobbying or using politics to kind of like get more for their child as opposed to other ones. That was tough for me as a head coach, where I was like, I see what you're trying to do. Why don't you just let your child try to earn it for themselves, as opposed to like politic it a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all boils down to playing time, right? I mean, I would hear from more parents if their child wasn't playing. Like that's, whether that's entitlement, whether that, whatever it is. I mean, we see that the youth levels too. It's like when the kid's not playing, then the parents get real mouthy on the sidelines and, start becoming what I call a cancer. And they talk to other parents. This coach doesn't know what they're doing. You can see the progression of negativity and the cloud kind of covering part of the parent group. But
how did you handle those situations? Because I maybe have handled it a little bit differently, and probably not the best. Because when I got sent emails about that, like, why isn't he playing? I would bring the player into the office, and I would just turn my computer around and go, this is what I got from your parents. Like, because I was so honest with them why they weren't playing. I'm like, do you want to tell them why you're not playing, or do you want me to tell them? And they'd be like, I'll handle it. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like I would give them the opportunity, because I didn't want to embarrass them. So I was like, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk to your own parents.
Well, even with the player whose mom wanted me to know it's her birthday every year, or that there's something special going on. Yeah. I got multiple texts from the mom about like ridiculous stuff. I always told the player, I just want you to know, I heard from your mom. The players, whenever their parents message, are humiliated. Yeah. They do not want their parents talking to the coach. They know what they need to do. They know what they need to improve upon. And that, to me, is the singular most important thing that your dad did for you, that parents can do for their child and will help them to develop. And that is to say right back to them, what has your coach said to you? What do you need to improve upon? What are your goals here? How do you want to move forward? And if a parent can say, how can you be positive, productive, and part of the solution here? You've been taken out of the lineup, you're not getting the playing time you thought. So what are your options? You can't control a coach's decision, but you can control your reaction to that decision. And that is a very powerful thing for kids to think about, that parents can share with their kids and help them to think through it, because the way they respond will impact relationships moving into the future, will impact, like I said, your future playing opportunity. And then also is a great reflection of how things are going to be when you leave college and graduate and get your first job. What happens when you get passed up for that first promotion or first project you really wanted? Are you going to sulk and have your parents call? Are you going to, or are you going to be positive, productive, and part of the solution and move forward in a mature and professional way? And that's the bottom line. When a coach takes a kid out of the lineup, that is a professional decision, not a personal decision. Doesn't mean the coach doesn't like your kid.
Exactly.
It means, and we get back to what you said before, coaches want to win. They want to do what's best for the team, for the program. They have a big picture in mind. And that's what it boils down to. So
totally agree. I think that's such a valuable statement for parents in the youth game as well, because like, I think what you said is, I think every parent of a youth athlete should take that on board and start to use that strategy in the youth game so that they're better prepared going into the college. Like, it's not just like a complete, all right, cold turkey, cut off, communication from the parent to the coach. And, now the kid's just like not set up for success. Like, start to do that when they're younger.
Right.
Do it with your, 13, 14-year-olds. Like I said, I was at an MLS academy where there's 14-year-old kids that are 3,000 miles away from their parents. Their parents aren't calling the coach if they don't play. Like, they have to figure it out, and they're learning, and it's an incredible learning experience. So it's like, like I had a conversation before I went to the MLS academy from a different club director who had just gotten back from a foreign trip. So they took a team over to England and played. And I said, "Oh, it sounds amazing. Did you love it?" And he goes, "I would love to do it again without any parents."
Yep.
Like,
been there. I've done a lot of international tours.
Yeah. He was just like, he goes, "It was awesome. But like, the kids that didn't have their parents there, I think got more out of it."
Yeah.
And like, you could see, it's like, it was almost like he was like, and I told him, I said, the times I've done it, same thing. Foreign trips are awesome, but you have to put the parents in a different hotel.
Yeah.
You have to separate things and like let the boys experience things. Like, when I went on the foreign trip, when I was, 13, 14, my mom and dad didn't go. Like, it was expensive back then to go. Like, I was gone for 30 straight days. Like, it was amazing. Wow. I loved every minute of it. Like, and this is what I try to tell you. This is going back to a lot of themes that we've talked about, like the experiences you get by playing different levels of sports. Like, that experience to me is just as powerful as playing college sports.
Right.
Like, my really good friend that went on that trip with us, and then we were on the same team. He's the Cal head coach in men's soccer for Cal Berkeley. He won a national championship at UCLA. He played in the MLS. Every time I see him, he goes, "How fun was that trip to Europe when we were 13?" It's like the first words out of his mouth. Like, man, I think about that European trip every day. And I'm just like, of course you do. Like, that's like he had an incredible playing career, even coaching career. Like, it's, Cal head coach, but like, it's, his parents weren't there either. Like, we just got to figure things out, and we played sometimes, we didn't play. Like, you figured it out on the road, and it's like such a valuable tool, like, now for youth parents of youth athletes. Like, give your kids a little bit of autonomy and like give them the power and the strategies on communicating with their coaches and like learning through mistakes. Like, that's okay. Like, it's totally okay, and it's going to help them when they go to college if they're going to be better equipped.
Absolutely. And I think, as we wrap up this session, like, I think that's the number one lesson that parents need to remember, is that struggles are okay. Like, it's it's like the parent that rushes to their kid's aid when they skin their knee, just let them feel it out when they're, you know, a little kid. Let them feel it out when they're in youth soccer, youth sports. Doesn't matter. Let them feel it out. Let them experience the emotions that come with having to sit on the bench a little bit and deal with a tough coach and deal with, you know, within reason. Like, we're not saying let a coach abuse your child, but within reason. And you know, these struggles are good and they make your kids stronger. And that is entirely true at the college level as it is in the youth sports level.
Completely agree. Like I completely agree. It doesn't, you know, it's just like a slow drip effect as you're pushing them on through the levels to play college sports. Completely agree with that. That is like a very, 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 very true statement.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap things up for today.
Okay.
Kyle, it was great as always. I'm sure we'll have you back again soon.